Now more than ever, transportation business owners need industry experts at every stage in their company's life cycle. We bring them to you in the hot seat.
Welcome to In the Hot Seat with the Tenney Group. I'm Spencer Tenney. We've got an excellent show today. With us, we have Greg Feary from Scopelitis, an industry specialized law firm. Greg, welcome to the hot seat, sir.
Thank you, Spencer.
Well, before we heat things up, sir, why don't we just take 30 seconds and you tell our audience a little bit about Scopelitis and the work that you're doing there with your team.
Absolutely. Thank you. Scopelitis is an unusual law firm in that we're about 100 attorneys specializing in transportation. So we're a full service law firm, have about 40 practice areas, but virtually every single client is involved in transportation. So we represent about 5,000 transportation and transportation-related companies in an 18-month rolling cycle in virtually all areas of law.
That is impressive, and that's why we're glad to have you here, specifically focusing on you being a thought leader and the leading professional within Scopelitis when it comes to independent contractor status. So that's where we're going to focus today, and that's where we're going to heat it up. So first question, tell us about, well, number one, tell us what an ABC test is, and will we see a federal ABC test in this year?
An ABC test, Spencer, is really three factors. Any one of them that's not met results in the determination of a worker as an employee rather than an independent contractor. Those three factors quickly are whether the putative employer or the motor carrier in our instance has the right to control the daily details of the work. That's prong A. Prong B is whether the worker is in the same trade, occupation, or profession as the transportation company. And then prong C is whether the work or business of the worker has been independently established by the worker. The prong B is the one that tends to be the most difficult of the three prongs to meet and often results in a determination of employment status for the worker.
So do you think that we'll see some type of ABC test at the federal level this year?
As I sit here today, I don't see that happening in any official way, meaning this. The PRO Act, which was passed out of the House a couple of weeks ago, is at the Senate. It would, as we again sit here today, as long as the filibuster rule applies in the Senate, it'll take 60 votes to pass the PRO Act. The PRO Act is the vehicle that has an ABC test in it. And no one has either forecasted that there will be 60 votes to pass that out of the Senate. And while there, I'm sure, is jockeying on the filibuster rule, so far it doesn't look like the filibuster rule will be eliminated by the Senate. So with that said, I don't think it is technically possible for an ABC test to be put in place under the most, I think the suspect law would be the Fair Labor Standards Act. So I don't think it will be technically put in place, but there may be a variation or a version or interpretation that does get put in place.
So in the absence of certainty, what's the impact to the transportation industry? They try to figure out how to do business with these questions still out there.
Well, I think the transportation industry has been dealing with uncertainty on the issue of independent contractor status forever. And certainly in the last 15 to 20 years, it's not unusual ground for transportation executives to deal with this uncertainty, both at the state level and the federal level. The federal level has not been particularly troublesome, but the various states, and then within each state, the various application of independent contractor test on a per law basis, for example, workers' compensation or unemployment tax or wage and hour, That's always been a big challenge for the trucking industry. Today, I think what's happening is the trucking industry is trying to read the nuances and determine which states will be more problematic and which states will be less problematic. I said the blue states will stay blue and the red states will stay red. The blue states may get bluer, though, and we may see something like we're seeing in California.
Speaking of California, let's open up that can of worms and let's talk about. Well, first of all, maybe just a brief overview of AB5. What is it, and where do we stand with that in California?
Sure. So, just a little history lesson. AB5 was born out of a California Supreme Court ruling called Dynamics, where the California Supreme Court, in effect, imported a new test into the state of California, the ABC test that I've explained earlier, as a way in which to determine whether workers are employees or independent contractors under wage and hour laws. Then California AB5 was enacted to be effective. It was enacted in 2019 to be effective January 1st of 2020 to apply to a wider band of laws than just wage and hour. It would include unemployment tax and workers' compensation. Somewhere late in January, a federal district court in a case called CTA versus Becerra issued a preliminary injunction of the AB5 law to the interstate trucking. The AB5 has the ABC test in it, and it has a number of exceptions, but for the most part, it's an ABC test law. And where we stand today is the Ninth Circuit has heard an oral argument on September 1st of last year, and we wait for their ruling on whether to lift the preliminary injunction or to keep it in place.
So, what other states do you feel are the most likely candidates to follow California's lead on this AB5 issue?
Well, kind of, Spencer, under the blue states get bluer thinking, you're going to see states such as New Jersey, and I would probably put that at the top of the list, Washington, Illinois, maybe Colorado, maybe Oregon, maybe New York. But, as we think about blue states and red states, I think you can expect some bills to be floated out into the legislatures that have an AB5 look to them.
Interesting. So another hot topic out there is the UberLyft Proposition 22. How does that all kind of fit into this issue?
So in California, in response to AB5, where UberLyft and DoorDash felt as though their business model was under attack and they're not able to conduct their business in a gig economy or shared economy environment with employees in part because the workers don't want to be employees, and in part because the cost loading on a per person basis would be quite high. I came up with, in effect, a hybrid model. We could call it a dependent contractor, where if a worker worked a certain number of hours on a weekly basis, they'd get certain benefits, both with respect to insurance and minimum wage and a number of other things that would, again, if there was enough productivity, give them those benefits. So Proposition 22, I prefer to call that a hybrid or dependent contractor model. A variation of that actually has been in Canada for a number of years. And the president of Uber, or CEO of Uber, announced some months ago, after Proposition 22 was passed by the voters of California, that he intended to pursue that solution to the AB5 legislation wherever he saw it in any state. So in that regard, for a subsegment of transportation where personal autos are being used and on-demand deliveries are part of the equation, which could be the courier light package same-day delivery model. Proposition 22 might be a solution, or at least some way in which to navigate these AB5-like laws. For heavy trucking, I think it'll be a heavier lift. It'll be a different solution than how Proposition 22 reads today, but maybe a variation on that.
Great insights. Now, one area where our worlds kind of intersects is on the M&A side of things. And a lot of that's just in response or in frustration to this regulatory environment. People get frustrated. They think that they might want to exit. Or in many cases, it's just they don't really want to exit. They just have frustration over a problem. And they don't know how to address these things. So what's one piece of advice that you would give to transportation business owners on how to navigate this evolving environment and how to limit their legal exposure? There's kind of a couple of different perspectives. If you're looking at private equity investing in the space where no asset or light asset, independent contractor model companies are targets for acquisition or merger, I think you have to step back and ask the first question: do you have the risk appetite to be in this space in general? It's not really a target specific question. It's a sector specific question. And then once you've answered that, the next question is, okay, is the target, where are they on the continuum? Are they a high risk target as compared to others in that space? Or are they low risk or moderate risk in the space? And that becomes a matter of, especially in due diligence, analyzing whether they're within the context of independent contractor misclassification issues, whether they've observed best practices for their operating areas. And I usually start, because we kind of put federal law off to the side for a moment, I usually start with an analysis of where the contractors are domiciled to get kind of handicap the risk picture to say, well, if you have a lot of contractors domiciled in the South, Southwest, not sure I'm as concerned, because those laws tend to be more entrepreneurial based and more favorable to independent contractor status. And on the coasts, a lot of workers domiciled in California or New Jersey or New York. The analysis gets a little bit more specific as to what risks there are, what exposure there is, try and put numbers on that exposure, and looking certainly into the next level of practices. Well, excellent. I appreciate that. So last question for you, a little bit of a wild card, Greg. So I got to know, I understand that you have 3 daughters that work at the Scopelitis law firm. What is the secret to convincing 3, not just one, but 3 of your next generation to join you at your place of work?
Well, the real secret is to not convince them at all. And in fact, that's exactly what happened. I never really actually talked to any of my daughters about going into law school or practicing law. There were people in their lives that were, I guess, at any given moment more influential than I, and I just sat back and, I'm proud of them, certainly, but it's been a fun ride, and I'm hoping that they would say the same thing. You'd have to ask them, Spencer. You're in a family business yourself, so I know you appreciate that.
I appreciate that it's not an easy thing. So, listen, thank you so much for sitting in the hot seat with us. And also thank you for the work that you're doing for our clients, particularly in the M&A due diligence. It's such a valuable asset to ensuring smooth transfer of ownership for both parties. And so we keep an eye on the things that you're doing. Keep us updated with the issues that are affecting our industry. And we will see you next time.